Hello folks, Guy here again. Welcome to my home on this very beautiful spring afternoon. The name of this video is called The Why Guy Is Caustic. Caustic? You know, I've recently been called caustic. Not just once, but twice from the same person. Okay, see, this guy's a member of our group on Facebook, the Why Guy group, and I honor and I respect this individual quite a bit. I really do. So I feel it wise to step back and take an objective look at why he has that opinion of moi. Okay? See, my first step was to look up the definition and see if it applies to moi. So caustic is an adjective, and the first definition is it's able to burn or corrode organic tissue by chemical action, a caustic cleanser, or ... Okay, number 2, sarcastic in a scathing and bitter way. Okay. In reference to definition number 1, when it comes to the hell doctrine, you know, and how I most often use it as an allegory in my posts, I must agree, and these videos, you know, I've got to agree with my friend. I am caustic. No doubt, right? Well, I feel a strong need for a caustic cleansing of scripture verses and translations that defame the very character of God's love. Are you with me? Okay, now ironically, a belief in hell, though, is by far one hell of a, pun intended, one hell of a lot more caustic and corrosive to an actual trust that somebody might actually obtain or have in God and His love, you see? So which one's worse? A caustic belief in hell? Or a blatant frontal attack like I do? A caustic attack against such a belief? Which one's worse? See, being objective, I can see an absolute harm in believing in hell. I really can see it. But I only see a potential harm in my approach against such a belief. Just a potential. Because a lot of people aren't offended. And there is no harm with me coming against that crap. Okay? See, we're all wired differently in how we deal with such things like that. And my friend knows that, and we still love each other despite our differences. You know, why he called me caustic. I wasn't offended by that. No, the fact that we still love each other, that's cool stuff, folks. That really is. So, what about definition number 2? Sarcastic in a scathing and bitter way. Am I sarcastic when dealing with the topic of hell? You betcha I am. Well, at least most of the time. It's so hard not to be, considering the absurdity of it, as well as how easily it can be disproved by researching both language and historical data. You know, the words scathing and bitter way requires a judgment of the heart and motive. And guess what, my friends? These definitions do not apply in my case. They don't. So let's look at someone who was really caustic, okay, as an example. Somebody that we all know. We've all heard of, at least. WWJD. What would Jesus do? Needs to be addressed now at this point. What was the approach Jesus most often took when addressing those, and I got to do the quote, those leaders? And I'll explain why I did that in just a second. Anyway, what approach did Jesus take most often with those guys who were slandering the character of God, just like the hell doctrine does? What was his approach? Let me give you some examples. Liars, hypocrites, son of a trash heap, Gehenna, full of robbery and self-indulgence, whitewashed tombs, full of dead men's bones, all uncleanliness, their heart is far from me, God speaking, brood of vipers, child of the devil, serpents, thieves, and robbers. Wow. Jesus was incredibly caustic, don't you think? You know, I see a lot of sarcasm as well in his definitions, and yet I don't believe any of it was done in a scathing and bitter way. I really don't. In my opinion, if you think about it objectively, And to a degree, every one of the definitions that Jesus gave, it best describes a hell believer. It really does. Well, I made sure to clarify in my opinion, okay? Now the reason I put leaders in a quote just a second ago is because I didn't see Jesus treat the average person who was deceived, manipulated, the common folk, the same way that he did the leaders. Think about that. I mean, look back on that. I think you'll agree with me. So, in my defense of being caustic, I guess, most of the time I don't know who are the leaders, in Christendom, who happen to respond and reply here on YouTube or on my Facebook and stuff like that. I don't know if they're leaders or not. So, it can be argued, rightfully so, then why take the chance of offending anyone with the way I respond, Because I'm a little rough around the edges, I'll admit that. It's a valid question. But see, my convictions of not having an answer, and that's a scripture that I'm quoting, my convictions of not having an answer for that hope that lies within me, and saying nothing in rebuttal to their hell doctrine, it doesn't sit right with me. I just can't sit still with that kind of stuff. Just can't. I put on the old spiritual boxing gloves, man, when it comes to that stuff. So in closing this video, I view a non-offensive, cautious approach more as apathy. That's what I feel like. If I'm that way, I feel like, you know what I'm saying? I feel it's more like it's apathy. It best defines apathy more than it defines love. And I simply care too much to keep my big mouth shut. So, all this to say, this video is I know for a fact that it is the Spirit of God that does the real work in changing hearts and minds. I know it is. But who's to say, all right, that God won't use the words that we write and share on YouTube videos, stuff like that, so to speak? Who's to say that he won't use this stuff to do so? Okay? Even though others may view them as caustic, like my friend did. All right? Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right? Look me up on Facebook under a group called the Y Guy Group, as I mentioned earlier about this guy. And it's a private group. I also have an avatar name of John N. Jones, and it's public. Consider giving me a thumbs up, thumbs down on this video. Be polite with any comments. Consider subscribing. Consider buying me a cup of coffee. And possibly supporting this channel with Patreon, or through Patreon. However they do that. Thank you for viewing.